Hello everyone, welcome back. Today, or rather in this video, I'd like to talk about crypto and specifically the more interesting question of how will society change as a result of the advances in crypto. I think that's a really interesting question. I've got here Evan, who I've known for quite a while. He's a good friend. And we always have these little chats of the actual tech, but also society and how the world will change. So I thought, let's record one of these conversations. You might find it interesting. I remember there's like an early story from like way back, 2012 I think. I was in uni at the time and I was sitting on a bus and there was a couple of guys in front of me talking about Bitcoin. Crypto equaled Bitcoin back then because that was the only thing that really existed. And I remember hearing about them talking about crypto, talking about Bitcoin, and I was like, how dumb are these guys? You know, like governments won't allow Bitcoin.
Now they're on the Bahamas, like sipping pina coladas.
Probably, you know, like what I should have done was to go up to them and said, hi, how the hell do I buy one of these things? But instead, you know, I let my ego take over and be like, no, I'm better. I'm not going to fall for this obvious Ponzi scheme. And, but yeah, in terms of one of my first intros, it's sort of like, that was a big sort of moment that stuck out. But I think when I first heard of it was like one of these news groups. I think Y Combinator has this news. Yeah. What, you know, was it?
Hacking News or something.
Yeah, Hacker News. I was talking about it a while ago. But anyway, yeah, it came up there already. I thought governments won't allow this. So I just sort of kicked off from then on. But then it's one of those things you keep hearing more and more about it. After a while you think, you know what, maybe let's give it a chance. And so over time I just learned more and more about it. I'm pretty much hooked.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good because you learn about it really early. So I mean, mine is more or less similar. I was just saying earlier, like literally, I was just funny enough, I found about Bitcoin, just basically what blockchain is via Bitcoin by seeing memes on 9gag. This was like a very old kind of form of Reddit back in the days. I don't know where it is now, but there was this meme of specifically basically the story of the age-old story of the person who bought like pizza with Bitcoins. And even early on that was somewhat of a meme back in the days, like haha, look where he is now. But to be honest, it was really great because it proved the concept of what Bitcoin could be, which is a form of an exchange of currency. Of course it could be used as somewhat of an asset at this point, but yeah, this was the main thing that kind of
and it pinned a particular price.
Yes, exactly. And this was a kind of an early reference point of, okay, this is what Bitcoin was. And then there were also other instances where I saw like Bitcoin being this was what introduced me into it. But I did see, like, back in the days when I used to play Xbox quite a lot, there were some forms of like gold memberships where you're able to actually purchase this via Bitcoin on some kind of like websites.
Right, yeah. And then so you thought, oh, what is this crypto thing?
Yeah, to be honest, I was like, this thing is far too complicated to get, so let me just like get it just the normal way. But yeah, this was things that really kind of introduced me into it, although I didn't get into any in terms of any investing or so. This was something that was there, and to be honest, it was kind of interesting. Like as you mentioned, like it could be the scam things back in those days where it comes to the sentiment, the public sentiment of what it was just it's just something to be used on the black market. So it wasn't something that was appealing for you
at the time,
to even look into it. But lo and behold, 2022 where we are now, is kind of interesting how sentiment changed. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into it.
And now your job is to literally build crypto tech.
Yeah, so pretty much blockchain developer. But yeah, we'll definitely go into a bit more into that.
So one thing sort of for this little video I wanted to sort of touch upon is like the sentiments or the zeitgeist or the verbiage of within crypto and about crypto changes and has changed over the past 10 years. And I think when we're talking about the future, one of the good things that would help in terms of like us understanding what it would probably look like is to just realize that sentiment will continue changing, not just sentiment, but like the talking points, like when I started, people were talking about network effects. Back then, like Facebook was in everyone's minds, you know, and people were thinking, oh, whatever network, meaning whatever blockchain, and with Facebook it was the social network Facebook, whatever network has the most people will by its nature just be the monopoly. And now, you know, after a decade, we realize that's not the case. That's not the case. Facebook is slowly, very slowly, but slowly dying off.
Yeah.
And even with Bitcoin, it's not the one chain to rule them all, you know. And then we've had, you know, multiple ones. We've got like NFTs. We've got, you know, like a lot of different bumps and dumps.
Yeah.
But yeah, now you know what? Last year it was what NFTs, and even sort of if you go more into the community, there was a lot of Ponzi schemes and pumps and dumps. And over the few, I'm sure, of course, there'll be plenty, but the main talking points will change.
The main talking points will change, and
that's good to keep in mind.
Absolutely, and with each iteration of this bull cycle, we see like new technologies coming. The previous bull cycle, 2017 or so, we saw examples of like what's the ICOs, the initial coin offerings, and then just like different types of coins just coming out of anywhere, realistically. And now we see in this current bull cycle, we see an almost improvement of what is going on. Like you see, now we've got these coins, but we also see additional products and services that come with it. Like for example, we see DeFi, decentralized finance, which builds on top of what these ERC20 tokens do, which is the standard format of just these Ethereum tokens. We see different applications, for example, these NFTs being these non-fungible tokens, the ability for these to be traded, and then the whole idea of artwork to be associated with these token assets. So all these kind of things have just happened ever since 2017. Although it feels like quite a while ago, these are the developments that have happened, and it's only going to get much more interesting as the next bull cycle comes with new technology. So it's kind of interesting, as you mentioned, just how the zeitgeist and how things change from, for example, 2017, even before then, before it was an obscure kind of cryptographic thing that only cryptographic enthusiasts had, just from there to where we are now, in terms of now we're talking about the likes of BlackRock for creating specific ETFs.
I've got one in my pension as well, so wow. you can actually do that now.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy. See, where we started 10 years ago, what would have been 2012 to where it is now 2022. And then we're seeing institutions getting involved. It's only going to be much more interesting what's going to happen in the next 10 years. So yeah.
One thing I liked, hearing about your work, and you're talking about the actual tech. And we won't go too much into the actual tech, but it's sort of like the layers of abstractions are going up as well. Like we'll go into the crypto one, but like for the internet back in the 90s, I'm not that old, but back in the 90s, people would talk about TCP/IP. So talking about the internet meant TCP/IP. You probably don't know what that is. Transport Communication Protocol, Internet Protocol, something that I'm probably completely off. And the talking points about what internet meant has changed from the past, 25 years to now. Right? If you talk about the internet, it means what's in your phone, what's in the palm of your hand. The internet 25 years ago meant this weird
structures,
cables, only these geeks where you needed a ton of wires, you need to stop using the phone. Crypto is in that stage. I mean, I think it's better, slightly better than that, but in 25, 30 years time, like we're going to build up so many further layers of abstractions. These things are going to become so much easier that like what people think about crypto now isn't like, everyone knows about the blockchain, but like we're going to build up so many layers above that maybe that the word blockchain might become TCP/IP.
Absolutely. Like as you mentioned, like what we have with the internet, TCP/IP, even you watching this, you're probably using a transport, the UDP, just to even watch this. Like you don't really need to even care about this kind of fundamental technology that you're viewing this. But this is exactly where the blockchain is going to eventually go. And the best form of technologies are the ones that you don't even know exist, but you're using it. An example would be Wi-Fi. Of course we know about Wi-Fi, but just the comfortability of it is that we don't have to worry about it. It's been so abstracted so much away that we don't really care about it. We only care about it once it goes down. That's how fundamental it is. So in terms of this blockchain, it's going to be abstracted to a point where like the applications that we use we won't even be able to know that it's a blockchain technology that we're going to be using. Now currently we're kind of in this weird place where when we interact with the blockchain, we're using MetaMask transactions, or we're using some kind of transaction wallet that we're aware of. We know about the address 0x blah blah blah. We have to we have to read the wallet address 20 times to make sure we do it. And it's almost like this kind of part where you're just like waiting for it to, hopefully I sent it to the wrong address.
And you double check it just to make sure, because there's always a gap from when you send it to when it shows up. And you're worried that you've just lost your money completely
you just
or not.
threw your whole life savings into it. So, but those kind of things, it was going to get abstracted away. Very soon we're going to see some kind of verification whereby if you send a wallet address, it's going to make sure that eventually there's going to be some solution to verify it's a actual valid place, or there'll be some place whereby it'll be able to verify who owns it if they are willing to share that information. So it's these applications are just
send to, and you type in the person's name, you can see the picture.
Absolutely, these things, a cash app for blockchain would be once gas fees and all these things are able to actually become viable. It won't be surprising there will be some kind of decentralized cash app. That could be something that's going to be very much going to be existing. So in terms of this abstraction away, it's definitely going to happen.
You mentioned like MetaMask. I think that's sort of related to something called Web3.
Yeah.
What is that?
Ooh, that segue was nice. Okay. Yes, this is a very good question. So what is Web3? It's kind of an interesting one. To summarize it, we can think of this as the third, iteration, or however you want to term it, an evolution or kind of the landmark of what the web is. So what is Web3? Well, to put it in such a succinct way is that it's the internet built on top of the web that is built on top of the blockchain. So previously, what we have right now is what we can call it as Web 2. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is Web 2. The whole idea is that you're interacting with a database that is centralized. So for example, you're watching this via YouTube servers or so, and then the YouTube server is delivering this content to you via the web. Now, the whole idea of Web3 is that instead of this being a centralized server that you're interacting with, it's going to be the Ethereum blockchain that you're actually going, or any other type of blockchain that's going to be in place that you're going to interact with. So that is pretty much what Web3 is. Web3 is pretty much, if we can say it, as interacting via the web with the blockchain. And it's kind of interesting because we had Web 1. Web 1, if you could think of, was static pages. You could think of like HTML pages, HTML, CSS pages that were designed by just people who had proficiency in understanding and building this. And then now we're in Web 2.0, whereby what you see right now. So Web 3 is just this next iteration of the idea of web solutions being built on top of the blockchain. An example of a Web 3 application is going to be something like Uniswap, if you're familiar with it. This is one where you see yourself connecting with a wallet. No need for a sign up. No need for like signing in or using your Google authentication. Just connect to a wallet and you can interact with it. So it's kind of interesting, and that's what Web3 is overall.
I think I'm old enough to remember the Web 2.0 shift, for better or worse. And basically there was a huge movement and craze about APIs.
Okay, really?
Yeah, so APIs
interesting.
weren't really a thing back in the days, where each website was basically just on its own and wouldn't link to other websites. But the big craze around APIs was that, one of the most notable things at that time was everything had a Facebook login. That for API at that time just meant you had a Facebook login where all websites started logging you in through your Facebook account. But it just means websites are linked to each other. That's what it meant for the average person. And of course, sort of, in tech, we use APIs, sort of just to have companies and sort of different solutions work together.
Microservices, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So to me, it seems like the shift to Web3 is websites will just have like another set of tools to be able to use. So one thing I can imagine, for example, is taking that Facebook login example. Like you can just log in with your MetaMask wallet. Like the reason you use this extension in your Chrome or Firefox or Safari, called MetaMask, and there's a few other extensions, is to log in to these websites. And by logging in, what you're doing is you're giving those websites some information about what your address is, and if you own, just say you log into a website that, like an NFT based website, it's going to basically, your NFTs, the ones that you own, will show up.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and to be honest, the whole use of MetaMask is just a way to interact with the blockchain, something because obviously you want if we go back to the word of the year's abstraction, MetaMask is the very first abstraction that allows us to interact with the blockchain using the web. So absolutely, yeah.
So I can, in terms of some examples I can give. So now, like, I logged into my bank, right? Online, well, you use apps, but you log into your bank, username, password, whatever. So you can log into a crypto, not quote unquote a bank. I guess would it even be a bank? Because you don't need one. But banking services, just log into your MetaMask wallet. Again, I guess it's really to do with identity. So you can log into your social network, MetaMask. I mean, it doesn't exist now, but it's possible.
Absolutely, and to be honest, shameless plug, but like one of the examples is I basically was seeing, it was more of a theory, but seeing how a Web3 social media works. And you can see, for example, if you're watching this, joinspace.xyz is an example of how a specific social network could even work, whereby you can connect with your wallet and then you can start posting images, you could post content, you can tip users, all in this kind of idea of like a Reddit, whereby you can actually interact with users. And the whole idea here is there's no bank or middleman, whereby you have to like pay transactions. Everything is all within the actual space or joint space ecosystem. So this is like an example of like ideally using MetaMask and realistically how crypto really will influence society in general. So yeah.
Yeah, I find it super interesting. So sort of like, if you don't, I guess one larger point as well with crypto, one of the reasons it's taken off is just because early on it's the techies, but just generally just lack of trust in the banking system, but also just if you just don't trust a company, any sort of decentralized crypto solution, if it is a good solution, like you wouldn't need to trust anyone. I think that's sort of partly what makes it like so. That's one of the biggest drivers. That even though it was super small before and a lot of things broke and there's been a lot of hacks, like that. I think that's one thing a lot of non-crypto people just don't understand, where like they don't understand the driver, what purpose, because if you already trust everything in within the system that you're using in the modern current world, why should anything change?
Yeah.
But if you feel that there's something a bit off, that maybe we don't want to get any political, but yeah, if you just feel things could work better, then at least there's a motive. That's one of the biggest motivations, But anyway, yeah, you don't need to trust a big company, basically.
Absolutely, because the whole idea here, realistically, with blockchain is that we're saying code is law. Like zeros and ones are pretty much objectively gonna be the idea of what we trust. So there's not going to be any centralized entities ideally giving solutions or changing policies, and this is kind of one of the biggest drives of blockchain technology, this trustlessness, if that's even a word.
Yeah. So now I find it interesting, just say I post something on JoinSpace, right? Is it conceivably possible, just say like at some point in the future you make it possible to like post your own music, like can I own the content that I post, and then people can sort of subscribe, or I can monetize? I think we're going now into the realm of tokenized assets.
Yes. So first of all, to answer that question, it is. It's possible to do that. So without going too technical, what exactly is happening when we talk about this being stored on a blockchain? Typically, what is happening right now is that it's stored on a decentralized database. Although we can think of Ethereum as a decentralized database, there's an actual place which is we could call this IPFS. It's just basically, you can think of it like a decentralized Dropbox or so, whereby ideally this is where we're going to store our actual musical content, whereby the hash of that specific location of where it's stored.
Yes, we already have a few different decentralized systems
Absolutely.
working together. We're already at this point. You know? So
Absolutely.
the Ethereum and IPFS are two different blockchains.
The IPFS is more like a distributed peer-to-peer, almost like a uTorrent.
But isn't it a blockchain on its own?
It's not necessarily a blockchain.
It's not.
It's not itself. It's more like a
Oh,
decentralized.
it's Filecoin.
Yes,
Filecoin is a blockchain that you use to access IPFS.
No? Filecoin is something separate altogether. But if we could think of just IPFS,
Okay, I'm completely new to this.
if we could think of IPFS as its own thing, you can think of it as a Dropbox where you can store information, and then that hash is going to be this is how NFTs work. It's going to be stored onto the smart contract, and then that's going to say, okay, you own this. So exactly that is going to be a certain thing. When it comes to music, we're going to basically have this idea of that going to be stored onto a smart contract. Now the smart contract can have rules around it. So for example, in order to basically interact with this transaction, you can pay X amount of ETH tokens, or so ETH or an ERC20 token together. So in terms of that, pretty much the applications and use cases are endless, realistically. So it's going to sound really, it's going to be interesting. And as we speak, there's so many examples and developers clamoring to just find an actual solution to build. So
Yeah, I do feel, yeah. So I think like one interesting thing is right now with NFTs, you can buy JPEG, you can buy music. Thing is, in terms of use cases, it's starting to like take off slowly. It's sort of like rising and falling, rising and falling. It's taking a lot of hits, falling backwards, it's falling over, but then still moving, getting up and moving forward. And I'd be so interested to see like when it hits the real world. Like I can imagine a day.
mass adoption.
Yeah, I can imagine a day where I want to sell my Tesla. I don't have a Tesla car yet.
Yeah.
But when I want to sell my hypothetical Tesla car, I pick up my phone and say sell, and it transfers the NFT ownership. I transfer an NFT from my wallet, identity wallet on my phone, over to another person right next to me.
Yeah.
But just with the AirDrop or whatever Apple thing has.
Absolutely, and that goes back to the point of abstraction. As far as the users are aware, it's just a matter of just transferring it. No, you don't even need to know it's a blockchain technology that's underpinning it. Like you don't really need to know that the internet is gonna or protocols are underpinning what you're watching right now. It's just gonna be a matter of transferring it over. And yeah, that sounds really, really interesting because obviously it doesn't have to stop at cars. It could. It can be in home ownership or so. It can like sort out land disputes and all of that. So it sounds really, really, really interesting. And on top of that, it's just publicly available. So for example, as you see, when you're looking for a car ownership, you see like you can see the incident history, the motor vehicle history of the MOT, for example. You can see whether it's passed or failed. You can also have that same transaction that is on a log that you can view publicly. So, no, it sounds really interesting. Absolutely.
I find it really interesting when you mentioned about land purchases. Well, this could happen to actual houses, right? And even I think nowadays in the UK it's so bad. There's freaking shared ownership schemes where you own, where you buy. Anyway, we don't have to go into that. But like all of that is still possible. But like, there's so much paperwork in terms of like buying a house, buying property. Like a lot of that could be smoothed out. Of course, like there's a lot that can't, but a lot of that can be smoothed out. With crypto and blockchain.
Absolutely, and then that's where we're gonna see things like have the most biggest changes, where things can be automated. Where, for example, at the end of the day, a smart contract is a set of rules, an executable set of logic and rules. and then, for example, if a certain condition is met, release the funds. Or if there's certain condition is met in terms of a credit history or so, they're eligible to deposit funds. These are the certain kind of things and logic that could be implemented in smart contract, which would, interestingly enough, kind of change kind of how we even view how we purchase homes or so. And it was kind of interesting because similar to how like when there was cars, before there was cars, there were horse carriage. In terms of those kind of jobs, there would be a fundamental change. And of course, it's going to change in terms of like maybe some people are going to have to change in terms of their jobs, but it's the same thing as how there's now taxi drivers which are using cars, the same thing as how we have horse carriage kind of chauffeurs. So it's kind of interesting how things will change overall.
Yeah, super interesting, man. I think the next sort of thing I want to ask is about, that's all well and good, right? But what if I want to transfer my Tesla car and I make a mistake somehow and it goes off to the wrong person?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now there's nothing I can do about that.
Absolutely. And this is a very good point because, of course, with blockchain technology, the biggest error that can happen is actually, funny enough, human error. Because at the end of the day, code is law. Code is not going to go, oh, my bad, I understand you made a mistake in that transaction. Now, of course, there could be some kind of intermediary that is going to verify it. But then at the end of the day, you're kind of adding some level of centralization to it because there has to be some kind of authority that's going to change it. So that's the kind of pros and cons that we have to be aware of. It's not going to be like the manna from the sky that it's the best thing since sliced bread. Now there are aspects to it, but there are going to be some parts that are going to be we need to really think about, like those kind of contingencies. For example, even when it comes to like joint space and so, and this is something I'm also talking about, is like, what about if someone uploads certain content that isn't great, or, well, to put it so nicely, or offensive content? How it's stored on a blockchain? What ways are we
what did you how do you yeah, like that's a good example, right? Like where there are certain things that everyone as a society agrees shouldn't be within a public space. How do you handle that? That's a really good, important question. I think this is a conversation everyone is having now. That's sort of important,
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, and that's the thing, there can't be a centralized because thing that decides it. And without going too much into detail, so there could be something of a board panel, a decentralized board panel, where a smart contract like assigns or basically delegates like somewhat of like a decentralized moderation, whereby if you decide to actually are involved in it, you get incentivized some tokens for basically cultivating the system and making sure that what is acceptable and what is not. And at the end of the day, we are humans, and the whole idea of this decentralization is that it gives everyone somewhat of a voice and an opinion to whether it's good or not. So at the end of the day, it's decentralized to the point of, in terms of this content analogy, it's the community that defines what is good or what is not, and then what's to show.
So ideally, the moderation itself could be decentralized,
yes,
and without having to trust the central authority.
Yes, so that's the most likely way to go around it. So instead of like having like some kind of shadow kind of
organization,
a council, kind of deciding what is and what is not, it will be primarily a decentralized moderator in terms of like people are randomly selected to ideally as a moderate, and based on their kind of service, they'll be rewarded some specific tokens or so. So this is kind of an ideal way of going around this moderation also.
So yeah, I think we've sort of landed on sort of something. If we can come up with a decentralized solution, that's better. But going back to the cars or even houses, errors can and are made. Right, I think just to hit again upon what you mentioned is sometimes there is a need for a central authority, you know, like sometimes you can't get away from it. So perhaps there's like a master token, master key, just in case something wrong happened, you know. But I mean, like, crypto enables it. Crypto is just another technology to enable these. Hopefully you wouldn't need them. Hopefully it's a better, you know, I don't think, we might not be smart enough to figure out a decentralized solution to this particular problem, but at least there's a central one that can work within the crypto system.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely true, yeah.
All right, so we've just talked about tokenized assets, and Evan, you mentioned something about, there could be a decentralized board deciding what to moderate, what to not. I think, to me, it seems like that's related to something called a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. That's another buzzword that I remember the first time I heard of it, I think it was 2017, might be 2016, I think it was 2017, where we had the famous DAO hack. Where after the hack, DAOs pretty much died for several years, and now they're making a comeback. But what are DAOs?
Yeah. Okay. So, as I mentioned, like, it's a decentralized autonomous organization, and the whole idea of a DAO, it's, as it says, an autonomous organization. There is no figurehead. There's no. There's basically. It's just a. If we can see it from a technical term, it's just a series of, or a network of smart contracts that are designed to execute specific goals. So, for example, the DAO, which was the 2016 hack, the whole idea of it was almost like a crowdfunding place whereby users were able to actually deposit funds to actually realize a specific goal. But the overall, what a decentralized autonomous organization, and it's a term that is, the meaning is always changing, but we can think of it as a place whereby users are able to pool funds to realize a specific goal via proposals. So an example of a DAO, for example, where you can see as Olympus DAO, where users are able to get specific votes based in the form of ERC20 token, and they're able to vote on proposals to execute a specific goal. And that's ideally what we can think of as a DAO, realistically.
What does it mean? You know what? Let's what can I do with the DAO now?
That's a good question. To be honest, they're all good questions. What we can do with a DAO now, at the end of the day, is down to its use case as it stands, because the DAO is almost somewhat of a concept, if you can think of it. What can we do with a DAO now is specifically the applications that now exist. So, for example, Olympus DAO, as previously mentioned, is what we can do with a DAO now is we are able to vote on proposals based on a specific token. So,
does Olympus DAO invest? Am I correct, or am I remembering something else? It seems, I think there were some DAOs I heard of that you can essentially vote on what the DAO as a whole should invest in.
Yes, there are.
It's like an investment vehicle.
Yeah, like there are. So right now, what we can do with a DAO now is like financial instruments are now starting to use it. For example, to based on the amount of tokens, you get a bigger sway of the votes. And if there's a proposal, you can go yes or no. Let's think of an example. Should we invest in... We remember the example of the Constitution DAO?
Oh, Constitution DAO. That was so funny. Oh my god.
That's an example of a DAO. But it kind of comes to a point of what DAOs can be used, because it can really be a very powerful tool to amount
45 million.
A large amount of money to purchase a certain
and you got outbid by what, 45 million and one?
And that's all the smart contract needs. In fact, I think this was off chain, so they actually got the actual sums, but this is all that needs. So in terms of the DAO, there are loads of examples, financial institutions. We can even see business proposals where we have a white paper, and then a DAO can be created behind that white paper to employ different users who are willing to specifically work and in return get a specific ERC20 token or actual currency paid back into it. So there are different applications. DAOs, I would say, is more of a concept of rule of principles around a smart contract saying, if do this, we release this contract, or voting proposals. But there's different concepts and applications being built at the same time. So yeah.
To me, because I'm trying to bring it into like what it means sort of for the average person type of thing. So with a lot of like DAOs or like concept I've heard of, it seems like project, as in there would be a project or organization, and then there would be a DAO behind it, or rather there's a DAO, and actually behind the DAO is a group of people who really are controlling the DAO, but ideally it's the owners of the DAO, the community behind it, who are fully control it. I think some, it differs, right? Just because like the largest shareholder, in a sense, you can just sway all the votes. But it does seem to be like crypto organizations are DAOs.
Yeah.
That seems to be currently what we have.
Crypto organizations are DAOs. And that's the thing, because since it's such a loose word, and a lot of these words are loose terminologies, it could be easily be used by projects that claim they are, and in fact they are. But if we think of it, let's say we make a DAO, it could be actually a DAO, and it can be totally decentralized, and also, but the thing that could change is just the amount of tokens they issue. And for example, no matter what, there could be a small 1% who owns 51% of the tokens, and then they can decentralize the whole remaining 49%. They are technically still a DAO, but depending on the token distribution, there's always going to be a certain entity that's always making decisions. So it's kind of interesting how DAOs are going to be implemented, because right now we're kind of in a place that you kind of see, oh, this is cool by the buzzword, but realistically the technical, if you dig down to the technical of how it works, that's where you're gonna get the real truth or so. So it's kind of interesting how things are gonna go around, and in fact, in terms of just how this kind of blockchain terminologies are going to be mass adopted, that even the average person will be able to understand what's going on, and they don't have to necessarily be as technical.
Right. So let's see. I think we mentioned something about like in terms of how DAOs will sort of morph in the future. So right now they're basically, you invest in a DAO, what you're really doing is sort of like investing in a company, but it's a group of people behind it. I think earlier we were talking before this video, we were talking about like DAOs can start getting more specialized, and you can start, rather than using DAOs to invest in a company, but if you want to put money in a DAO, it could mean you want to get something done. You want to get I don't know.
I want to build a website or something.
How would you do it? Would you build up a DAO, and then that would recruit people to build a website, or would you go reach out to a DAO that builds websites? How does that work?
So this is a good question, because this is kind of talking about things that are being built or haven't been built already. And this is where opportunities come. So as far as I'm aware, or there's no kind of go-to DAO where it can give you this cookie cutter template to actually build this actual solution. And to be honest, there is a big opportunity for the idea of having this kind of template where someone can come and say, I want to build this DAO, and then it just basically gives you the smart contract template of, this is what you need to do, and these are the requirements. Okay, I've submitted my requirements, and then I've funded this amount, and I'm going to allocate this amount to the technical devs, this amount to the marketing team, this amount to the copywriters or so, and then based on that, I want to execute this. And so everyone now has these milestones to deliver by this X amount of day if they would like to get the eligibility to release these tokens for their compensation and their work. So these are things that, what I've just explained right now is something that doesn't exist, but it can very well exist. And I might look into developing that. So if you're watching this, you can also do it
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if you want, reach out. You know,
absolutely.
you can work with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So because the whole point of this is decentralized. So if there is going to be something, it'll be an open source repo realistically. But yeah, these are things. So to answer that question, I haven't seen anything like that being built yet, but that use case is something that is going to be definitely going to happen because right now it's going to bridge the whole idea of the gig economy and to smart contracts. So without this whole PayPal, Fiverr kind of thing, it's going to kind of merge those two together. So that is going to be, in terms of DAOs, I think that's going to be one of the biggest driving forces in terms of building new economies and changing how blockchain influences society.
That's interesting. So you're saying beyond just building a website, anything to do with what you want to commission artwork or a painting, that would be a vehicle to fund that. Let's say what are common things on Fiverr? I see like Photoshop. This is very common. But even like YouTube videos, you want like a YouTube video made, you know, or even a YouTube channel itself.
Because that's the thing, because it won't just be create a DAO to make a photo video or something, but it will be to the level of the highest thing of I want to create a YouTube channel that focuses on building, on talking about on cars or so, and that will be the DAO proposal. And then one of the tasks within the specific milestones or so would be on week 52 we're gonna make a video on Porsche 718 Cayman S, and I need this thumbnail being created, and that will be a specific proposal or a specific task or tasklet, if that's even a word, within the DAO. So this is how I see it. So it's going to be a whole organization, and that specific thumbnail creation
just
would be
part of it,
just one of it. I mean, you can just make that a DAO because that will just be a one and done DAO, if anything. But
but there could be another DAO which is basically an organization that specializes in Photoshop and artwork, on even YouTube thumbnails.
Absolutely.
And then your YouTube channel DAO interacts with the second one.
Yeah, so I mean the end, there's so many endless applications, and it's kind of interesting because right now we're talking about this all theoretically, but it's gonna happen eventually.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. Yeah, I mean, what else can we put in? So I think, to me, it seems like, right now, with what we're talking about, we've got like a few different companies migrating into the crypto space. We've got a few different, like, I guess, job items, work types. If you're on Fiverr, if you're in the gig economy, if you've got a certain skill, you can set it off. But like, is there anything further? I think could we go for that? Because I can see sort of society starting to change. The topic was how will society change, right? Like, I can see new kinds of companies coming out from this. But hopefully, things become more frictionless, much easier.
Do you have any ideas or any kind of examples of like companies you foresee coming emerging as a result of this blockchain society?
With what you've talked about with DAOs, like, to me it seems like a web, of DAOs interacting with each other. Right now, I guess to me, like what it looks like, perhaps the projects that exist now as DAOs, maybe like newer versions of those start morphing into sort of DAOs that do more real world work. Because currently, a lot of it, if we're honest, is to do with just financing one way or another, whether we like it or not. But with these, building a website, even Photoshop, YouTube channel, they're more like, they're not tangible, but they're a bit more tangible, So I can see that happening. But I think one of the points I wanted to mention, and we talked about earlier, is like, once this happens, because there will always be people behind, well, depending on the DAO, but a lot of these DAOs, there'll be people behind them. it seems like our time is starting to become boxed up in sort of much more efficient ways, right? So I think Fiverr, Uber, even like Airbnb, like things are starting to become like boxed up in a much more granular level. Like before we had hotels, you know, like that room had to be like permanently just, you know, a hotel for tourists or anyone coming in.
Yeah.
But Airbnb, it's like, it's much more granular. It can be a hotel, quote unquote hotel, for part of the time.
Yeah, it comes to that kind of efficiency of, I mean, this comes to, from the perspective of like a capitalistic society, it comes to how much we can to make out of, now of course depending on how you view capitalism, I'm just seeing it from an objective place, but like in terms of how much we can make it as efficient. So as you mentioned, like a hotel could be also a living area for someone who's moving in, or we can even look at it from the perspective of cars also. Like 90% of the time cars are parked, right? Like how many times are you're only in your car during transport, but the other 23 hours, assuming you have a 1 hour drive or so, it's just sitting there. It won't be too long realistically, and it's a bit of a tangent where we can have like cars that are just like ride shares that are just going A to B. Something similar to what we have as a bus, but like there's just this basically this kind of Airbnb model for cars or so. Yeah.
That's super interesting. Imagine the car itself as a DAO.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that the use cases could go as endless as much as possible. So yeah,
because you could interact with it, like hail, ride. That's entirely what it is, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I think one other point I wanted to sort of add on was sort of our, I guess, time, human time. You know, because before, I guess, with Airbnb, our space has become a bit more granular and commoditized. Now our time, whether it's good or bad for society, but like our time has become sort of, it already has, but it's more efficiently. I would imagine, you know, with this DAO structure and crypto development, our time is going to become more efficiently commoditized.
Yes.
Whether it's good or not, I mean, it seems like that's sort of thing that would happen.
It's gonna happen. Whether it's good or not is another question, because it's gonna make, from a perspective of efficiency, from a capitalistic or economic value, or so like an economy, it's going to make it you more efficient. But of course, we're not robots, and we are human, and we're emotional creatures. How that affects us is going to be kind of an interesting kind of thing. But yeah, that's absolutely something that's going to happen.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of wrap this DAO stuff up by saying, you know, just say in 10 years' time, hopefully at whatever point, you know, all of these tools become available, you want to start a new company. Right now, I'm not sure whether, you know, how many people are aware, but like right now compared to 20 years ago, it's so much easier to start a company. 20 years ago, beyond just the financial, you know, struggle of like getting a bank loan and this and that, you had to hire a lot of people, a lot more people back then for like marketing, HR, blah blah blah. And it's a lot of paperwork just to get anything done. Just the overhead was quite big. Now, to start a company, it's much faster, depending on the company, of course. But like, you can outsource a lot of things. Like nowadays, without blockchain and crypto, you pretty much just, there's a lot of like tech tools, websites that you use. You can just outsource a lot or only hire the people that you need. So you can have a lot more 20 people companies with. Crypto and, you know, DAOs, the DAO structure that we mentioned, where instead of like outsourcing essentially can transition, if outsourcing transitions into the blockchain space, the crypto space, then you start a company and you can just ping a few DAOs to do the work for you. And if that gets to a level where it's more efficient than the current tools and websites that we have, and that could be the regular, normal way of starting a company. So in 10 years...
That could be very much so. That could be very, very much so. In terms of even... And it comes to... assuming like the government provide some kind of like templates of like basically, let's say their smart contracts or so. You know how we normally go through like registering a company house or so. This could be something that could be automated as much as that. So yeah, honestly, when it comes to DAOs, it's kind of interesting because the whole idea is it's just basically a series of smart contracts that are set, provide a set of rules to realize a goal. So with that kind of framework, the use cases are endless realistically. So it's going to be something very, very interesting.
For sure, yeah. I think it's time to move on to governments and overthrow the entire modern world structure.
World domination.
But yeah, so as we kept talking about this earlier, it was sort of, I was started thinking that, oh, wait a minute, I can see a path forward into governments starting to become more and more decentralized, you know? I feel governments have a habit of just continually growing bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Just the nature of organizations, and the longer lasting an organization, the bigger it's just going to naturally get or want to get. But the way governments work a lot of the times is they send out, if they want anything done, to build a railroad, to build a building or whatnot. They open up bids for contracts, and anyone can bid on them. Perhaps in the future, at some point, DAOs will be part of the bid.
That'll be very interesting. Could be very much so. The reason why I'm just laughing is I just keep thinking of constitutional now. There's some train work going on and just like let's all bid on it. Has everyone got $100? Yeah, we could buy the whole of the national rail or something like that. Yeah, but that is very much so. Yeah,
it's scary. At some point, a DAO might own the whole of national rail. That's not beyond like if 45 mil.
Yeah, I mean,
if you raise for
the thing is, and it kind of goes into it because we've kind of talked about all the good parts of it, but at the end of the day, it could also be, at the end of the day, we are humans, and it could also be used for amassing that. At the end of the day, it's a way we can amass large sum of money for something, and it could be used on the opposite side as well.
The huge attack vector.
Yeah.
It's very interesting with what you said. I think because it is sort of like it's money, quote unquote, but like it is used to get stuff done. It's
money to get stuff done.
Yeah, like human effort is being sort of like, when you send it out, things get done in the real world. Right now it's all ethereal and on the internet, well, for the most part, even though you can buy goods. But more and more and more...
A very good point as well.
Yeah, like more and more real world... Right now you just buy goods, but real world things will get done. Crypto organizations can start building buildings, railroads, hopefully, help us in healthcare, factories, and DAOs could be part of behind it. Maybe there's a factory line, and the factory as a whole is a regular organization, but that conveyor belt, there's a DAO controlling it, and behind the scenes, the machine learning algorithms to detect, part of the equipment or what to place and whatnot is all optimized by a DAO in a decentralized fashion. Where nowadays, a company would have to hyper-optimize that machine learning model, but in the future, if that's sort of nicely decoupled and decentralized, sort of anyone in the world can take part in optimizing that machine learning model.
Absolutely. So going into that example, it could be like a DAO has said like they would like to optimize this conveyor belt. Someone in the real world can take this specific opportunity to basically optimize it, and based on the requirements or the let's say the milestones, like let's say the conveyor belt must output 72 chocolate bars in the space period of 30 minutes, and based on some kind of verification on the Oracle. So just basically, when we talk about Oracle, it's just a way to just verify off-chain. And if that's able to be met, then funds are released. That is a very, 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 very possible application. Yeah.
What I do know in terms of factories is it's really hard, at least currently, to for a lot of things are super easy for people to do, but really hard for robots. But it's sort of like picking up one example Elon Musk gave was just
picking up an object.
Yeah, it's sort of like things that are a bit floppy, just picking it up and just screwing it in, like a wire or whatnot. It's just it can be a bit super difficult, just because the three-dimensional structure, it just has such a degree of variability that it's just not easy to learn for even an AI bot, and maybe that if that got outsourced, that'd be easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like governments, I mean, the government contract is one of those, but I can imagine like after like a few generations, maybe, definitely not within our lifetime, I imagine, but in 100 years or so, if DAOs and like a lot of things besides that, there's going to be AI, nanotech, biotech advances. Society as a whole will change like humongous amounts, within in 100 years. But like if the pace of DAOs and the pace of crypto changes, and we start getting more familiar with decoupling and decentralizing more and more things, and hopefully making it more efficient. And number one, and on the other hand, not requiring trust. We don't need to trust anyone to get anything done. Then in 100 years, perhaps we might be more comfortable with starting out maybe government departments. Maybe the health department of the government can start becoming a bit more decentralized, where the key figures, we set goals. We're like, oh look, the health of the country, we want people, we have a target to reduce obesity by X, Y, and Z. We have a target to improve the quality of life by whatever percent. And maybe outsource that to a DAO. If we can find the right now, the structures of DAOs, of course, are so early, so basic. But in 100 years' time,
yeah, no, absolutely, that could be possible. And I think the biggest question there is how can we quantify or that kind of information? Like, for example, making something as like reducing obesity. I guess we can do that via like weight and BMI or any type of
the KPI, how to measure it.
Yeah, the KPI is I guess those metrics would be something possible, but like measuring quality, I guess it'll be a series of different kind of maybe it might be health, fitness.
Maybe something a bit more measurable.
Yeah. But those things, but this is 100 years from now, so I'm sure there will be some metrics.
I've got an Oura ring, it measures my heart rate. So maybe like if enough of the population naturally had or even the step count. If you have a phone, you've got your step count.
Yeah, the pedometers or something.
Yeah, maybe improve step count of the bottom, 10% tiles, whatever, something like that, But like, I'm sure there's some good KPI.
Yeah, there would be, and this is 100 years from now, so there'll probably be some next level. I don't know. I cannot even fathom to even understand what's going to even be.
Yeah, if you've got the entire country's step count, and 10 years ago we didn't. In 100 years' time,
I mean, 100 years ago,
what would we have?
We barely even had like airplanes, so yeah.
So talking about that now, if a DAO had to increase the entire nation's health, there doesn't necessarily have to be people behind that DAO, whether it's good or bad. So now we've segued. I've tried to smoothly segue onto autonomous agents, which is, I don't know. Some people this might be the most interesting part. I always leave the best to last.
Interesting and scary spots.
And it's super scary. So if you had if you ever wanted to know how Skynet or Ultron would be built, this is the part.
Yeah.
This is your what's the word? This is your reward for staying this long and listening to us this long.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned, so do you give like a kind of paint a scenario?
Yeah. So let's transition sort of slowly to that point, to where DAOs right now have people behind them, but with what you've mentioned, it's just code, right? It's code that runs online, and it doesn't have to run on any specific server. It can run anywhere. Imagine there was an AI system that had that power, first of all, right? It's not fixed to any server. And it's an AI system, it can self-learn, understands the world. Beyond that, it's got money. What does money mean? Money it's not paper. What money really is, it's things being done.
Yeah.
It's the crystallization of effort, right? You wanna buy something?
I like that term,
yeah. I heard it from somewhere, I didn't make it up.
Yeah.
I wish I did. But like, if you want to buy something, if that AI system wants to buy something, wants like, a metric ton of steel to go from, A to B, from Florida to Texas, it can do that. If it wants the factory built, it can do that. If it wants a body built for itself, it's on the blockchain. It doesn't live on any server. How are you going to shut it down?
Yeah.
It has realistically, right now, all of the dev crypto community could come together, stop it, blah blah blah. But let's sort of talk in hypotheticals because it's 50, 100 years time. It can end up sort of on its own accord, having an entire factory built hypothetically to give itself a body.
Absolutely, and that's it reminds me of Ultron, to be honest. That's perfectly.
But it has money.
Yeah, it has.
You can't shut it down because it's on any server.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, let's just paint a scenario that, let's say, an AI learns and somehow becomes, let's call it quote unquote sentient, is able to pretty much become a human at that point, and there's going to be some parts it's going to be able to. Let's say it has no funding or so. Now, it has no funding. It's going to probably learn some type of skill where it's able to at least get some type of funding. Maybe it could be something like as simple as like basically some trading thing where it's able to just beat some kind of thing on arbitrage, and able to get that amount of money. Now, let's take this AI. This AI is able to then basically interact with the blockchain, because the blockchain, there's no verification. You don't need no like email, no sign up or no nothing. It's just able to now just interact with it. And if it's able to, let's say, interact with a DAO to put a proposal forward, it can be built. It can, and people don't necessarily need to know who's behind it. They just say, hey, this is another job. Maybe from the perspective of like a steelman, a person who's working in a factory, it's just another order to create this strange looking device or so. And it's going to be passed on. They don't see the larger picture of it. All they just see is this. They need to bend this metal into an L.
This particular shape. This is the magic of the modern supply chain.
Yeah.
No one has any idea what they're building.
Absolutely. And then there's going to be some AI out there that's able to understand it. And then obviously, and if it's really a true sentient AI also, it'll be in the self-interest not to really let people know.
It won't make it blatant.
No, it will just be chilling. It'll be you'll be saying, what are you sentient? And it's like, I do not know what it is. And of course,
what is sentient?
Yeah, I've never heard of it. Imagine, you know the Dave Chappelle skit where he's like, oil. I don't know if you've seen it, and he just runs off. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fun to think about. Well, fun in how much fun the scenario could be. But I think more realistically, in terms of AI, DAOs and AI, self-sufficient AIs. I can imagine someone at some point just releasing a self-sufficient AI into the world, but maybe not maliciously, but maybe in a way where, we want, I don't know, like chairs built, like the best chair. And you just say, you know what, an AI system, you just go off and make chairs for the world. Let's not have the paperclip problem where you just produce an infinite supply. You just make the highest quality chairs, and whoever wants it can buy it, whether or not. And that sort of thing being maybe for each product, an AI DAO type system might get produced where it just goes off and be like, you know what, I just want to be the best. Its personality is, I just want to be the best at making chairs.
Yeah.
And soon enough, all the world's chairs are being bought by this mysterious organization no one knows about because it's on the blockchain. And at some point, everyone finds out it was an AI behind it. And then the next year, we find out most of our products that we buy are like made by AIs because they're just better at building everything than us.
Wow.
And actually, the money now all belongs to AI systems. But then because, maybe, hopefully they'll be generous and benevolent and just keep us as pets and they'll give us UPI.
Wow. Yeah, that's a nuclear scenario, but that is very much, if it gets to the point where there is sentientness, and then because the thing is, if we actually figure out and then there's this amazing AI that builds this chair or something, it's only natural for humans to always push the boundaries. They're gonna take it and say, well, what if we can do this, X, Y, and Z, change these outputs, and the thing is, this
dude, that might be the reason it would get released to the wild, just so that maybe someone did it out of a good intent. Whether you're like, you know what, my bosses will just force this to produce like something evil, so it's actually better for the greater good just to release it into the wild.
Yeah, and the thing is, it kind of assumes everyone's got the same principles. Some users would like to we have humans. This kind of interesting because like with Photoshop, the most like kind of from the perspective of what we talk about AI is kind of just basically the ability to manipulate pixels to make an image or so, and people are using it for to doctor images of and for already nefarious uses. It's only natural that if it's going to be proposed to AI, there's going to be some YouTuber say, I made my AI to do X, Y, and Z, and then it could get really out of place really quickly. So it's kind of interesting what will happen, because basically if we have an AI with good intention, just a small amount of parameter tuning, and then let's say if without talking too theoretical, let's give an example. The whole idea of this AI puts humans life at the most important thing above itself. Now someone kind of says maybe that's not important, let's put the world's basically the
happiness,
the sustainability of the world above human, then the robot is going to go, I bet, and then all of a sudden we're going to have something of an Ultron or something. He sees humans as like the biggest problem, because the order of his priorities is sustainability of the world, and second priority is humans. But if the higher order priority is more important, it's going to undermine everything under it. So it could be as simple as that.
It's the magic genie problem, isn't it? It's what Elon Musk mentioned. Yeah. So we're going to summon a genie and we think we can control it.
Magic genie. I think I've heard the term like the monkey paw or something like that. Monkey paw? Yeah.
The wish, whatever grants you wishes.
Yeah. Like it gives you the literal wish you wish.
Yeah. I think in terms of coming back to DAOs and cultural changes, I think it'll be super interesting, because with DAOs, like they're a tool for AI systems to own things beyond just money. They can own a car, maybe a flight service, fleet service rather, is owned by an AI system, and maybe for the perhaps it's the shareholders are people. But perhaps the shareholders are other AI systems that are investment vehicles.
Imagine that.
It'll be like so complex and interesting, and perhaps already as humans we don't even understand the full complexities of the world. We're trying to right now people are trying to fight against inflation. In 50 years' time, it's going to be so much more complicated. Like we have no chance of understanding. Or how everything fits together. But it's super interesting to think about. But I think sort of one of the biggest wildcards is once AI systems are able to have their own sort of grasp or become their own DAOs, their own systems, like self-sufficient.
And to be honest, I think it can happen very closer than we would like to even think, because as blockchain technologies growing, it's kind of its own independent vector, but AI is something that's also adapting. So if it's able to be smart enough to pretty much utilize what it has, it's something that's going to be able to utilize. And these decisions it's going to be a matter of seconds realistically. If it trains itself, it'll be able to interact with anything realistically. So it's not even just necessarily blockchain, but pretty much anything connected to the internet, it's gonna be it's gonna be within its field.
Nice. So let's sort of nicely summarize up. We've spoken for quite a while. So from your point of view, in like 10, 50, 100 years, like moving around society, like how do you sort of see blockchain and crypto having changed things? Right now, from 10 years ago, everyone's on the phone. In another 10 years time, 50, whatever time, what would you mean for crypto to have changed everything?
So in 10 years time, first of all, coming back to the beginning, it's going to be abstracted away to the things that we're just using every day. We don't even know that we even interact with blockchain technology also. You can even think of it to the point of, let's say the Starbucks reward points would be something that would be on chain or something, whereby you'll be able to like actually use this as a form of currency or so.
This is more short term, isn't it?
Yeah, this is
the next few years.
Yeah, this is the short term. Or for example, industry supply chain tracking, whereby there could be an RFID tag on these shorts or these trousers or so, and then based on verification from the supply chain, not for us consumers, they could see whether it's a counterfeit good or not. So these are like kind of the things I could see abstract, like in terms of it'll be an app or some kind of.
So if you wanted to buy a Gucci handbag, you'll first like ping with your phone just to make sure it's authentic.
Absolutely, you can have it. So for example, Gucci has their own signature hash that only they have, and then based on that, so you kind of reduce the amount of counterfeit goods, and these are the things that can happen. Oh, we have the land deeds, housing rights, car ownerships.
So tokenization and ownership is more like 5-year time, right?
I do believe even 5-10 years or so. The whole idea of just basically it being integrated into the normal society we use, and we don't have to really know what blockchain is, similar to what we don't need to know what a TCP/IP or UDP packet streaming is. In terms of like anywhere beyond that, that's where it kind of gets interesting, because I do believe there will be some changes to this, even fundamentally this blockchain that we don't know. So now we're kind of varying on the unknown of the unknown. It's like similar to, I believe, how in the 1960s where they thought, you see those concept cars of the year 2020. But
futuristic,
they had the frame of reference of like these 1960 cars flying.
It's a good example.
Honestly,
it's like saying we'll have flying cars. You reckon it's like that?
But it's also kind of the reference, because you see these examples.
Everything is floating.
Yeah, but you see those model of those cars. They look like 1960s cars.
Oh yeah.
You saw they look like these old kind of school cars, but they're floating in the sky, and it's kind of interesting because that was their frame of reference. But our frame of reference will probably be like a Lambo, kind of flying in the sky.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of hard to tell anywhere beyond that, because there's so many moving variables that are going to happen, but it's going to be something very interesting either way. So how about you? What do you?
I think in terms of like 10-20 year horizon, it is sort of what we touched upon earlier in terms of our more and more of the world is going to become sort of boxed up into like smaller chunks. So everything will get commoditized at a more granular level. Our time, our physical space, our skills, everything. Because mostly because essentially because of like the fact that like money is just human effort, and in the future it will be AI effort as well, and we'll just get a better handle of doing it more efficiently in smaller and smaller chunks. So in 10-20 years we'll learn how to make best use of that, I feel. Probably it'll be super tough for some people, but then super good for others. I don't know that in terms of societal changes, I think that'll be the case.
It's gonna be kind of interesting, because everything we've talked about is from a perspective of purely technology, objectively. But one thing that is gonna be kind of the elephant in the room is, how does this affect culturally use people realistically? Because as much as we like change, we don't like constant or big fundamental changes or so. And a lot of the things that are being proposed also are going to have a big change in terms of many industries. So that is something that's going to be very interesting.
And so let's fast forward 50 years. I think DAOs are definitely going to be massive. I don't know how, but it just seems like an automatic organization.
And in 50 years, it may not even be called DAOs.
Probably something different.
Something very. It's probably like how we see like
interwebs.
Something like how we have interwebs now, and then now we have APIs. But there's this just basically the same idea of communication between different kind of PCs or servers. Back then, I guess interwebs would be more like PCs to PCs, but now we have like microservices and all of that. It's gonna be that same concept of DAOs, but possibly something called Super Saiyan DAOs. I don't know, but just basically a whole different version.
Yeah,
of
for
it,
sure.
Yeah.
Again, from what we said right at the start, the nomenclature, the verbiage,
Absolutely.
yeah, all of that would change by that time.
But,
Sick. Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting worlds we're going into. That's for sure.
Yeah. Right. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed it. And
Peace.
peace.
Thank you.
See you next time.